Aaron David Miller is a Middle East analyst and a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us. We heard Netanyahu asking the families of the hostages for forgiveness, but it doesn't appear he's changed his position on the Gaza war. So where does that leave ceasefire and hostage negotiations at this point?
You know, this isn't really a question of one hand clapping, it's two hands clapping. And based on my experience in Arab-Israeli negotiations, they close only when there's sufficient urgency on the part of the decision. And cruelly, tragically, and sadly, there's insufficient urgency on Netanyahu's part and on the part of Yahya Sinwar, the preeminent Palestinian decision maker ensconced somewhere below ground in a tunnel and probably surrounded by hostages in Rafah or Khan Yunis. And two basic events over the last 48 hours convinced me that there's no urgency. Number one, the willful execution of 6 hostages, probably 48 hours before the IDF discovered them. And second, Benjamin Netanyahu's determination to hold out for control of the Philadelphi Corridor, even though his own security and Israeli Defense Forces analysts and commanders have assured him that there is a way to secure Israeli interests without a permanent Israeli presence. So yes, Philadelphia Corridor is important, but right now it's the hostages that are acutely threatened. The Israelis can always deal with Hamas. They have to figure out a way to get the hostages home. And right now, neither Sinwar nor Benjamin Netanyahu are prepared to make the compromises and the concessions that will enable an American mediator to broker an agreement.
Now, you're mentioning the Philadelphi Corridor, which it seems on the face of it is the major sticking point right now, as it seems in negotiations between Israel and Hamas. It's the space along the Egypt-Gaza border. Why do you think that Netanyahu is refusing to budge on that, on giving up control of it?
If it's not Philadelphia Corridor, it would probably be something else. Look, Benjamin Netanyahu's entire political world is driven and tethered to one overriding objective, which is the maintenance of Benjamin Netanyahu in power. He's conflated the interests of the state of Israel with his own political interests. On trial for bribery, fraud, and breach of trust in the Jerusalem District Court before 3 judges, 4 years in running now, he knows that if he loses power and can't find a way somehow to end run the indictments or delay the trial or have it canceled, he faces either a conviction, possibly, or alternatively a plea bargain to avoid prison that would mean the end of his political career. So this is the key to understanding Benjamin Netanyahu's motives, it seemed to me. And that means keeping a coalition of 64 seats with 2 extremist ministers who have threatened to leave the coalition should the prime minister make any sort of concession on the Philadelphia Corridor, or frankly, anything that would leave Hamas in power in Gaza. And the reality is, unfortunately, Hamas will survive, most likely as an insurgency. So right now, it seems to me, the U.S. is in a strategic sort of cul-de-sac, and there's no easy or quick way out.
No, you're saying that Benjamin Netanyahu has no interest in a deal. U.S. President Joe Biden has said that Netanyahu is not doing enough to achieve a hostage deal. Does Biden, though, have more leverage to get Netanyahu to act?
Well, if you look at the last 11 months, the answer to that question would be no. And we have 70 days left before one of the most consequential elections in modern American history, with Joe Biden's vice president as the Democratic nominee. And the reality is no political candidate, no Secretary of State, no president, and certainly no nominee running for office has any stake right now in picking a major fight and confrontation with an Israeli prime minister. To remember, if this were a conflict between Israel and Egypt, America's capacity to leverage and pressure would be greater, but it's not. It's a conflict between Israel and an organization which by statute U.S. has declared as a foreign terrorist organization, which created a terror surge on October 7, has abused and is holding and killing hostages, including American hostages. So I think the
Aaron
leverage
David
on
Miller.
part of the administration is much diminished.
Aaron David Miller, Senior Fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.